Brian Griffin is known as the most pretentious, self-absorbed playboy and hypocritical talking dog you will ever meet.
Robots do cocaine. What? Nothing, I was just, Can they get cocaine?
However, you might not realize that his failed ambitions and never-ending identity crisis stem from a life filled with disappointments, contradictions, and deep-seated insecurities.
Shut up, Ida. She's my favorite.
He's insecure and a blowhard. And he's got a tiny penis.
So, to truly understand what makes Brian tick, we are diving into every major event that shaped him. From his puppy days to becoming a Griffin, all the way to his death and surprising return. We'll also dive into his long list of past lovers, his bitter rivalry with Quagmire, and the series of events that makes him his own worst enemy.
I'm just not really a dog person, I guess.
Oh, yeah, me neither. Dog people can get pretty annoying.
You see, Brian wasn't always the well-spoken, martini-sipping dog we know today. He was actually born on a farm in Austin, Texas, as part of a litter of 5 puppies. His mother was a dog named Biscuit, and his father was Coco, a name that Brian doesn't exactly speak fondly of. Sadly, his mother abandoned him early on, which might explain a lot about his deep-seated personal issues. In the episode Don't Make Me Over, Brian has an embarrassing moment when he aggressively barks at a famous rapper. Feeling ashamed of his behavior, he blames his upbringing, particularly his strained relationship with his father, Coco. But the real kicker comes at the end of the episode. Brian, half asleep, turns off the TV while a black program is on. When he notices the cameraman staring at him, he immediately panics and insists that he turned it off because he was tired, not because of what was on the screen.
From the world-famous Apollo Theater in Harlem, it's showtime at the Apollo.
What? I'm tired. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's a black show. What, I can't be tired at 1 in the morning?
Yeah, Brian tends to overthink things. And for those wondering, Brian is canonically 8 years old. Though, considering how he drinks, drives, and dates human women, the math on that one is pretty questionable. Meanwhile, his life took a heartbreaking turn. Earlier on, he was taken from his family as a puppy, leaving him with deep abandonment issues that would follow him for years. As he got older, Brian decided to go back to the farm to find his mother and reconnect with his past. Unfortunately, his owner had some tragic news. Biscuit had passed away. However, she reassured Brian that his mother had always loved him and only gave him up so he could have a better life. At first, this brought Brian some much-needed closure, but that peace was short-lived. He soon discovered that his mother's body had been stuffed and turned into a table, so he and Suey took her remains and gave her a proper burial, allowing Brian to finally lay that part of his past to rest.
Excedrin headache number 1, puppy mill.
After leaving the farm, Brian attended Brown University in Rhode Island, but his academic journey wasn't a smooth one. He was just one course away from graduating when he cracked under the pressure and dropped out. This failure haunted him for years, so he later tried to go back and finish what he started. Despite his best efforts, he failed his final exam and never earned his degree.
Wow, you went to Harvard, huh? I'm an Ivy League man myself. I went to Brown. Oh, my incarcerated business partner's retarded gay niece went to Brown. What year did you graduate? Well, I mean, I didn't technically graduate. You're a college dropout?
No college degree and no stable income, Brian found himself homeless. Like many struggling young adults, he did whatever he could to make ends meet, including washing car windows.
No thank you, I just had it cleaned. No, jeez.
It was at this moment that everything changed for him. Peter Griffin noticed Brian on the street, took pity on him, and invited him home for dinner. The Griffins ultimately decided to adopt him, even giving him their last name. After experiencing so much loss and abandonment, Brian finally had a family that truly wanted him, which must have felt pretty special.
Wait. You hungry? Because, my wife makes this beefaroni casserole out of this world.
From the moment he joined the family, Brian and Peter became best friends. They did everything together and even went on countless adventures, like traveling back in time to save Peter's marriage and even becoming sheriffs when the family was placed in witness protection. While Brian could be arrogant and self-absorbed, he also had moments of true selflessness. One of his most noble acts was when Peter's kidneys failed. Without hesitation, Brian offered up both of his kidneys, fully prepared to sacrifice his own life to save his best friend.
Well, here we go. You know, buddy, I'm really gonna miss having a dog. Hey, what do you say you be my dog one last time, huh?
Sure, Peter, whatever you want.
Luckily, before the surgery could happen, the doctor stepped in and donated his own kidneys instead, sparing Brian's life. But as the years went by, Brian and Peter started drifting apart. They stopped spending as much time together, and Brian's growing arrogance and hypocrisy didn't help matters. On top of that, Quagmire absolutely hates him, which might be another reason why his bond with Peter weakened. For all of Brian's arrogance and self-importance, there's one thing he simply can't stand: someone hating him. So, when he realized that Quagmire despised him, Brian did what any insecure person would do. He invited him out to dinner, hoping to talk things over. After all, Brian is still a dog, and deep down, he just wants to be loved.
Well, what have you done to help? I work down at the soup kitchen, Brian. Never seen you down there. You want to help? Grab a ladle. And by the way, driving a Prius doesn't make you Jesus Christ. Oh, wait, you don't believe in Jesus Christ, or any religion for that matter, because religion is for idiots. Well, who the hell are you?
And when he finally hit Brian where it hurt the most, his writing, it was like a dagger to the heart. Brian always prided himself on being witty and intellectual, seeing himself as a talented author. But the truth was, he spent more time bragging about his book than actually writing it, something Stewie loved to mock him for.
How you coming on that novel you working on? Huh?
And to be fair, Stewie wasn't wrong. Brian spent years trying to write his masterpiece, a novel called Faster Than the Speed of Love, which, by the way, is probably one of the worst book titles ever conceived. But jokes on the haters, Brian actually got it professionally published with the help of Carter Pewterschmidt. Unfortunately, Brian's taste of success came at a cost. When Brian started campaigning to legalize marijuana in Quahog, Mayor Adam West actually passed a law in favor of it. But when Carter realized he was losing money in the timber industry as a result, he bribed Brian with an offer he couldn't refuse.
Forget it, Carter. I'm not gonna take your bribe. I don't care if you printed 1 million copies.
I printed 2 million. And I even commissioned an oil painting for your author's photo.
And just like that, Brian threw his morals aside for the promise of fame and fortune. But karma came back to bite him hard. Despite his big break, his book went on to become the worst-selling novel of all time, selling 0 copies. For a self-proclaimed intellectual, Brian has had an incredibly messy love life. He has had countless failed relationships, but his longest was with Jillian, a beautiful but ditzy woman with whom he had absolutely nothing in common, aside from some hanky-panky.
Oh, hey, Oogie. Ooh, you look tense.
Well, Jillian, there's something we need to talk about.
What is it?
I, just wanted to spend some time with you.
Brian loves to think of himself as brilliant, but in reality, he is not nearly as clever as he believes. Being with Jillian allowed him to pretend he was superior, even though in reality, he wasn't much better. But when they broke up, Brian was shocked to learn that Jillian quickly moved on and got engaged to another man.
And now, Jillian, do you take Derek?
Wait! Jillian, I'm in love with you. I want you. No, I need you. With all my heart and soul.
After striking out over and over again, Brian eventually met Jess, a woman who told him she had cancer and was working through a sex bucket list before she passed away. And Brian, well, he was more than happy to help out.
That was incredible. And hey, sorry I barked when you took your pants off. I thought it was a squirrel.
Ready to go again?
Well, I need time. I'm still recovering from that one thing you did that was so obscene it couldn't even be described on lame, dying network TV.
After completing Jess's wild bucket list, something unexpected happened. Brian fell in love. It was rare for Brian to actually connect with someone, and for the first time in a long while, he felt genuinely happy. But just as things were going well, reality hit hard. Jess had only 2 weeks to live. The thought of her never getting old, never settling down, never experiencing a real future made him panic. And in a dramatic, impulsive move, he decided to propose.
One of those things you can do. It would be my honor if you spent the rest of your life as my bride.
Oh, Brian! Yes!
As fate would have it, just as they signed the marriage certificate, her doctor burst in with some shocking news.
Everyone, your attention, please.
Dr. Gravitas?
That's right. I want to give you two your first gift. These are your latest test results, Jess, and they're remarkable.
Meaning what?
Meaning Jess is going to live.
While this was great news for Jess, it was Brian's worst nightmare. He hadn't planned to be married for the rest of his life, just hers. Instead of enjoying the honeymoon phase, Brian was suddenly miserable, stuck in a cramped apartment with Jess and way too many cats. He was desperate to escape. Then, in what seemed like an unexpected stroke of luck, Jess choked to death on some nachos.
They only had mild.
Problem solved, right? Well, not exactly. As Brian delivered her eulogy, Jess suddenly gasped for air and sat up. Realizing there was no easy way out, Brian was left with one final option. He had to fake his own death. But before he could go through with his ridiculous plan, Peter stepped in and gave him some marriage advice. Fully embracing his new lazy husband lifestyle, Brian became a couch potato, while Jess grew more and more frustrated. Eventually, she had enough and did what any fed-up wife would do. She turned him over to the pound. Brian was just moments away from being euthanized when Peter showed up and saved him just in time.
Please, it can't end like this. There has to be something I can do.
Well, for $200, I'll strangle you with my bare hands and stare into your eyes as you die.
What? I'm not paying for that.
I meant I'll pay you.
Stop! That's my dog! Oh, Peter, thank God! You got here just in time.
You want to make $200?
After a heated confrontation, Brian and Jess had an epiphany. They were both terrible and deserved each other. So, they decided to give their marriage another shot. And then, in the very next scene, Jess dropped dead for real. Well, that solves that problem.
Well, Brian, I'm sorry that Jess died during the commercial break, but it was a very nice funeral service.
Yeah, it's sad. She was the love of my life.
But perhaps Brian's deepest and most complicated crush is on the one woman he can never have, Lois Griffin. The only problem? Well, aside from the fact that he's a dog and she's a human, she's also married to his best friend, Peter. But that small detail hasn't stopped Brian from sniffing around her constantly. At one point, Brian started having an embarrassing problem. He just couldn't stop peeing himself. Things got so bad that he ended up going to therapy to figure out what was going on. And that's when the truth hit him. He was in love with Lois. Of course he knew it was wrong. She was his best friend's wife, after all. But no matter how much he tried to deny it, the feelings just wouldn't go away.
Okay, just to be clear, we were talking about me being in love with you and you rejecting me, right?
Yes.
I'm just making sure.
After struggling with his emotions, Brian finally married her. But this was after Peter got himself lost at sea and was presumed dead. So Brian stepped in to take care of the family.
Guys.
Peter, we've given up hope. I can't tell you how happy I am that you're alive.
Oh, come here, sweetheart.
Wait, Peter, there's something you should know. I'm not quite sure how to tell you this, but I got remarried.
Lois even cheated on Brian with her own husband, and Brian was furious. Until he realized something. Lois never really loved him. Even after the whole fake marriage ordeal, Brian just couldn't let go. He even tried to grab Lois, which earned him a well-deserved slap in the face. At first, Brian's crush on Lois was kind of innocent but over time, it just got creepier and creepier. By the end, he was basically a full-on sex pest. Or should I say, a sex pet? Okay, gross. Forget I said that.
Sorry I'm so late, babe. Levi, no show to get... hey, Stewie.
So, after years of rejection, Brian finally accepted the truth. Lois was never going to love him. Instead, he moved on to pursue women of his own species, which, let's be honest, was long overdue. While Brian usually chases after human women, he has, on occasion, dated his own species, including Ellie, the show dog.
This is it? It's happening right here? Right now?
Uh-huh. They have to certify the union, Brian.
Stud is ready to mount. Please turn up the lights.
What? No, the opposite! In fact, could someone maybe turn on some Drake or the Weeknd?
But like most of his other relationships, it didn't last. At one point, Brian found himself in love, but not with a woman. Instead, he fell head over paws for Carter Pewter-Schmidt's prized greyhound, Seabreeze.
What's Brian doing?
Oh my god!
He's violating Seabreeze.
No, he's just awkwardly positioning himself. Now he's violating Seabreeze.
Things got complicated when Seabreeze ended up pregnant, and suddenly, Brian was about to become a father. Carter, being the rich and powerful businessman that he was furious about the situation. He wanted nothing to do with Brian and, more importantly, wanted to keep him away from Seabreeze. Not willing to let that happen, Brian took matters into his own paws and went on the run with Seabreeze. Of course, their escape didn't last long. They were quickly caught, but Brian wasn't about to give up his parental rights without a fight. He took Carter to court, determined to be there for his puppies. Instead of a heartfelt reunion, Seabreeze gave birth to a litter of billionaire mogul puppies. More specifically, Ted Turner's puppies.
Thank you, Ted. That was the joke.
You're a whore! A filthy, filthy whore!
Yeah. It was weird. Looking back, it's pretty shocking how different Brian was in the early seasons, but now, we know him as the pretentious, wannabe intellectual who only dates young hot women he has nothing in common with. It's almost unbelievable that this is the same Brian who, years later, would find out he had a biological son, and then completely neglect him. After his failed attempt at fatherhood and his awkward rejection from Lois, Brian eventually found love again, but in the most unexpected way. One time, he goes on a blind date which starts off promising, but soon enough, he realizes that he and his date have absolutely nothing in common. Feeling defeated, Brian vents to Lois about how he will never find an intelligent woman to love, but fate had other plans. After getting pulled over for a DUI, Brian was sentenced to community service. His punishment? Taking care of an elderly woman named Pearl with more sass than a teenager on TikTok. From the very first moment, it was clear they were not going to get along.
On the charge of driving under the influence, this court finds you guilty.
Yes! Good call. Churn the butter.
In lieu of jail time, I sentence you to 100 hours of community service. Next item.
From the start, they hated each other. Like, really hated each other. What happened next? Well, let's just say Brian's love life kept getting weirder. They started bonding over random stuff, like when they both realized they were the only ones in the house who enjoyed old school rock and roll. So there they were, Pearl in her walker, tapping her foot to the Rolling Stones, while Brian tried not to spill his drink on her ancient carpet. Brian, now thoroughly confused but oddly flattered, realized that maybe this wasn't the worst community service sentence. And Pearl? Well, she started to soften up just enough to hand him her knitting needles and mutter. And so, Brian's quest for the perfect intelligent woman didn't end in romance, but in knitting with a cranky old lady who would probably outlive them all. As for Pearl, well, she got her back rubs, rock music, and a dog that was weirdly good at grocery shopping. It wasn't love in the traditional sense, but for these two misfits, it was something almost as good. In the long run, Brian went through so many failed relationships that Stewie decided to gather all of Brian's exes for a little intervention. One by one, they listed every flaw that made dating him unbearable.
I don't know, the word self-absorbed comes to mind.
And pretentious. Definitely pretentious.
And he's got a big ego.
Okay, we seem to have a theme going here.
Oh, come on, you're all just mad because I didn't want to be with you. I think Brian's a wonderful man. He's just having a difficult time coming to terms with his own sexuality.
Shut up, Ida. She's my favorite.
He's insecure. And a blowhard. And he's got a tiny penis.
But not every relationship ended in disaster. One of Brian's first real loves was Tracy Finnegan, and while that relationship didn't last, it did lead to something unexpected. Fatherhood. Brian had zero interest in being a father, so he did what any responsible adult would do. He ran away. But Tracy had other plans. The very next day, she dumped Dylan on Brian's doorstep, leaving him no choice but to step up as a dad.
Hey there, everybody. Was somebody looking for a son with a bright new path to adulthood and his very, very proud dad?
Oh, Dylan, you got a haircut. Aren't you handsome?
From now on, I plan on being a real father to Dylan, and together, we are gonna turn his life...
Brian turned Dylan's life around, helping him go from a troublemaker to a well-behaved kid. But after seeing how much of a mess his mother's life was, Dylan decided that she needed him more, so he left to take care of her instead. And just like that, Brian's brief attempt at fatherhood was over. With Dylan gone, Brian lost interest in being a father until he found out Dylan became an actor on the Disney Channel. Using his son's fame to weasel his way into the writer's room, Brian forced his terrible ideas into the show. But when he pushed his luck too far, he got fired, and Dylan called him out for using him. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the relationship between Brian and Peter went cold. As time went on, they started hanging out less and less, and Brian found himself spending more time with Stewie instead. And when Brian needed him the most, Stewie would do the impossible, bringing his best friend back from the dead. During one of Brian and Stewie's time travel mishaps, they tampered with the past, causing major damage to the future. Realizing how dangerous the time machine was, Stewie destroyed it before something truly irreversible happened. Seemed like a responsible decision. Until tragedy struck. On an ordinary sunny day, Brian and Stewie were about to play hockey when a speeding car came out of nowhere, running Brian over.
Brian, look out!
The Griffins rushed him to the vet, but it was too late. A dying Brian said his final goodbye. This moment shook the cartoon world. The Family Guy creators confirmed that Brian was gone for good, and they even introduced a new dog, Vinny, as his replacement.
Hey you, green pants. I hear you're looking for a dog or something.
Oh, finally, someone who sounds like they went to college. Hi, I'm Peter.
Vinny.
Oh, Vinny, like the poo.
Vinny lasted only 2 episodes before the backlash was too much, and then, just when all hope seemed lost. Meanwhile, at Christmas, Stewie had only one wish, to get his best friend back. But with no time machine, it seemed impossible. Until he remembered something. His past self had once traveled to the present day to snoop on his Christmas gifts. So Stewie tracked himself down, stole the other Stewie's time machine, and traveled back to the moment Brian was hit. Just before impact, he pushed Brian out of the way, saving his life.
Brian, look out! What the hell?
However, there have been a few glimpses into Brian's future throughout the show, and well, things take a few different turns. In one possible timeline, we find out that Brian died from eating chocolate, a classic dog mistake. But in another future, 50 years later, Stewie secretly gives Brian a pill that extends his life. And for some reason, Stewie also proves that global warming was fake. But let's be real. The real reason Stewie gave Brian the pill is because he couldn't live without his best friend. And with that, we wrap up the wild, hilarious, and often tragic timeline of Brian Griffin in The Family Guy. If you've enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.